Coming to you live from Roundhouse Studios in Knock'em-Stiff, Ohio. It's American Exceptionalism with Scooter.
He has all the ingredients for disaster.
And El Scorcho.
He wants to be human.
American Exceptionalism is the place to highlight everything exceptional about the greatest nation on the planet.
It's gonna be awesome.
And now, Scooter and El Scorcho.
Sitting in the bayou country, just me and my fishing line. Raise a lot of hail and a holler, sipping on that Georgia moonshine.
Oh, just some good old boys having a damn good time. He's Scooter, I'm El Scorcho, this is American Exceptionalism, and God bless America.
Can I get an amen?
Man, if you don't love it, leave it.
Hey, that needs to be a t-shirt. You don't I actually think there's some dump trucks or something driving around that say that.
There are. I've seen those. If you don't love it, leave it.
The owner of that company has expressed interest in coming on the show.
Has he really?
Yeah. If you don't love it, leave it.
Awesome, man.
I love it.
Hey, listen, we got, I'm excited about today. We got a guy who is a engineer.
An engineer?
Yeah, like a chemical engineer. Spent a good amount of time in the fracking industry, so we're going to get some education.
He's a UT grad, right?
Yeah, University of Tennessee.
University of Tennessee.
Migrated up to Ohio.
That reminds me of a funny story once. So I have some good friends that went to UT. Whether you know it or not, those guys like to have a good old time. They're Southern gentlemen.
Sure.
And there was a lady, it was a business setting, and there was a lady that overheard these guys having a good time. And she walked over and she says, "I've heard you guys talk about UT all day." And she goes, "Did you boys go to the University of Texas?" And he looked at her very politely and he said, "No, ma'am." He said, "We went to the UT, and that'd be the University of Tennessee. And if it weren't for the boys from Tennessee, you people from Texas would still be part of Mexico."
There you go. Just saying it like it is.
The look on her face was like, "I can't believe you just said that to me.
That's offensive.
My name's Nancy Pelosi, and I approve this message.
And I hate Texas."
Or my name's Joe Biden, and I forgot this message.
I just crap my drawers.
Yeah, so what's the guy? Jim Johnson?
Jim Johnson.
Yeah, this is going to be good. He's an engineer.
A lot of misnomers when you say, when you mention the term fracking.
Yeah, that'll be good because there's a lot of people out there that they hear fracking and fracking this and frack that. Yeah, that was a new F word, right? Frack that.
Yeah,
but a lot of people don't know what what fracking means. So he's going to come on and set it straight, right?
Yeah, and in a day and age when they're shutting down pipelines and gas prices are going through the roof, I thought it'd be good to bring an expert in.
Single stroke of the pen and they shut down a pipeline, right?
Jim Johnson's more of an expert than either one of us. I thought, man, it'd be good to bring him in and get some facts, right?
Yeah,
instead of fiction.
Because a lot of people, again, they hear that word, but they don't have any idea what it means. So I'm sure Jim's going to set it straight.
Yeah.
So it'll be good. You got anything in case we missed it?
Yeah, I saw this is, this made national news, but NBA basketball player Enes Kanter became a naturalized citizen, and he was very outspoken about against the NBA and their ignorance towards China and all their shenanigans that they pull on a regular basis.
No, he's an NBA player?
Yeah, NBA
he's
player. He's
outspoken against the NBA?
Yeah, he plays for the Boston Celtics. Became a naturalized citizen, did it the right way, much like our friend Gabe. Mm-hmm. And he said, "I love America. This is the greatest country on the planet." He's it says he's a Swiss-born Turkish-American professional basketball player. So he lived in Turkey. He knows firsthand the negative aspects of being a neighbor with China. He knows what kind of evils are going on inside that country. And
the CCP?
The NBA needs to stop this facade. Let's start calling things the way they are, and let's call out China and hold them accountable for their actions. So, hats off to Enes Kanter. He actually changed his last name to Freedom, so it's Enes Kanter Freedom.
Well, how sweet is that?
That's commitment.
That is commitment.
Yeah, right there, man.
Wow. Are you serious?
Yeah, I'm absolutely serious. He's been on national news for the last several days, so it's a pretty cool story coming out of the NBA, which I'm not an NBA follower, but I thought this was pretty interesting.
Yeah, well, actually, I think I did hear something. I didn't know. I guess I'm putting two and two together now. But I think I remember hearing something about that, and they were going to have him on the national news outlet. And I'm like, heck, that's old news, man. We got Gabe.
Yeah, Gabe's already from Romania.
We beat you to it. Gabe from Romania beat him free. But
Gabe
didn't change his last name to Freedom.
That's what I'm saying. That's commitment.
Do you think when somebody asks him what his name is, he gives him the old Mel Gibson from Braveheart? Freedom!
paints his face in blue stripes. Freedom! I'm just trying to get a parking space. Freedom! Kenny! Freedom! He's at the Costco. I just want a parking space.
At the Costco. Oh, that's great. So, no, that's good stuff.
Yeah.
In case you missed it out there. So that's about the best thing I've heard come out of the NBA in about 8 years.
Been a long time. So yeah, I mean, a lot of times you get LeBum's opinions, which I don't really.
LeBum's opinion.
Yeah, I don't really give two rats ass for that.
And I mean, I'm disappointed in him because he for so long he did the right thing, and I don't know, for years you never heard about him except for his on-court performances, and he did a pretty good job of laying low, and then all of a sudden it's just, I caught a press conference and a couple F-bombs here and a couple F-bombs there. And,
well, he moved out to L.A. and he feels the need that, he feels like his voice needs to be heard. I mean, I just keep going back to this is a kid that literally went from high school at 18, maybe 19, walked right into the NBA. This guy has never had a job, a legit job. Has never had to struggle. And I'm sure he'll come up with all kinds of tales. Well, when I was a kid, we struggled to put food on the table, blah, blah, blah. No, I mean, like as a man, support a family, go out, take on a mortgage, a couple car payments, 3 kids, that sort of thing. He just walked into instant millionaire status. Mm-hmm. So I'm really not interested in his opinion. I could care less.
Yeah, and he's an athlete, right? That's a good intro to our airing of grievances today. But let's, without further ado, give us a few minutes here, refill our glasses, and then we're going to get after it with Jim Johnson, and we're going to learn what the frack is going on.
What the frack's going on. Pass the Wellers.
Sit tight, listeners. We'll be right back.
Is it time for a new career in the new year? Is it time you finally take action after hearing many people say to you, hey, you've got a great voice, you should do something with it? Hi, I'm Ron Allen of Big Voice Productions. God gave me this voice to use for His glory on videos, documentaries, narrations, TV and radio commercials, phone greetings, audiobooks, and much more. And I can teach you how to be a professional voiceover artist too, like I have for many others. Voiceover can be a part or full-time career, and it's in high demand the world over. My private voiceover lessons teach everything you need to get started as a professional voiceover talent, from voice acting to home studio setup and much more. Learn more at bigvoiceproductions.com or see us in the Christian Blue Pages. A 45-minute consultation with me personally is free. Just call 614-476-8833. That's 614-476-8833. New year, new career. Big Voice Productions. Quality voiceover training since 1998.
All right. Check.
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 All right, he checks out, so.
All right, welcome back from the break, folks. Today, like we said, we got a special guest with us live and in studio. His name is Jim Johnson. This is an individual who is a engineer by trade, chemical engineer. Is that correct?
Industrial and chemical and petroleum. I've been through a number of disciplines.
Okay. And part of the reason we asked Jim to come in today is he spent a good amount of his career in the gas and oil industry.
That's correct.
Jim and I met probably 10 or so years ago. Our boys used to wrestle together, and he and I had a conversation back then that I kind of wanted to re-explore, and it's about the fracking industry. The environment we live in today, they're canceling or they're shutting down pipelines across the country. They're putting thousands of people out of work, and it seems like this is a hot button issue with certain individuals. So I wanted to bring Jim in and just kind of re-explore fracking. What is truth and what is myth? Welcome. And before we get started, I want to say thank you. On this show, we love to point out those that have served and those that are serving. Well, I want to say thank you for your family sacrifice. You have a son serving the United States Air Force.
As do you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, so it's good to point out. Jim, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah,
happy to be here.
Yeah, this is going to be fun because, I mean, you listen to some listeners out there, there's certain topics that smart people like going, I don't even know what that is.
Yeah.
Fracking's one of them. I mean, they hear fracking. There's probably a lot of myth, a lot of untruths, and crypto's another one. I get all the time. Somebody, what is crypto?
Yeah. I don't know.
But yeah, so maybe that's a topic for next show. But I'm anxious to just hear what fracking is, just in its generalized sense.
So let's start with your background, Jim. Tell us your education and just kind of go where you went from there after college and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I studied engineering at the University of Tennessee, both industrial engineering with a minor in chemical engineering, and then I went to work for Dow Chemical in an environmental research group. After working with priority pollutants for 5 years, I decided I wanted to do something different, and I got an offer to transfer it into their oil and gas division, which at the time, Dow was drilling the deepest well in the continental United States in Texas. They were drilling a 32,000-foot well.
Wow.
And then they also had a service industry that serviced the oil and gas industry, which involved fracking.
We're out of Ohio. Did that ultimately took you to Ohio?
Ultimately, it did. I started out in Oklahoma, and then I moved around quite a bit, and then it was in Illinois, and then I got transferred into Ohio in the early 80s.
So how many years did you spend working in the fracking industry?
I spent about 7 years with Dow, and then from the standpoint with Dow, I've actually performed frack jobs, designed them from an engineering standpoint, and cement jobs, which allowed the oil and gas to be produced. And then I went to work as the vice president of operations of an oil and gas company and started drilling the wells, overseeing the whole drilling operations and the production of the wells, from servicing them to actually drilling them. And then I got into the business of selling the natural gas and started my own business in direct competition with Enron.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. So that was an interesting experience.
Yeah, I bet.
That's a name from the past.
Yeah, no kidding.
So from when we first talked years ago, I truly came at you from a point of ignorance. Like Scooter said, you hear the word fracking, almost instantly you get like a negative connotation with the term. So let's start at square one. What is fracking?
Fracking is basically a short for fracture. So the oil and gas is trapped inside deep-rooted rock formations underground. And typically here in Ohio, they're close to a mile deep as a rule in Ohio. 4,000 to 6,000 feet is the most common area of production in Ohio. There are wells, like I said before, there are wells that have been drilled into the over 30,000 feet.
Wow.
The misconception is that fracking in itself is the outcome. Basically what happens is a well is drilled into the earth, and you basically have a hole in the ground that's up to a mile, at least a mile deep, we'll say, for this go-around. And once you've drilled into the formation that holds the oil and gas, you're still inside a rock formation. There's the misconception of the idea that there's a river of oil and gas down there or a big cavern that's full of oil and gas.
Yeah.
That's, as a rule, doesn't exist. The caverns that were found in Texas around salt domes and stuff, those were the early finds where there was a lot of oil and gas along the edges of salt domes. But that's long gone.
Yeah.
And now we're drilling for oil and gas that's trapped inside rock formations that are not real porous.
Right.
The whole point of fracturing, and here's where it shifted. 100 years ago, old wells had to be fractured as well. So you drill a well, the oil and gas won't come out unless you do something to at least compromise the formation it's sitting in so it can flow out of the rock.
Okay.
In the old days, that was done with nitroglycerin. And then Alfred Nobel made it even better when they made it into dynamite. So they went from an unstable explosion to one that was more stable. So they killed less people to get the oil and gas out because of Alfred Nobel.
Well, that's a good thing.
Is that like Nobel Peace Prize?
It is indeed.
Okay.
That's where all the money, that's where he made all of his money.
Was it dynamite?
Was dynamite. That's correct.
How about that?
Yeah, that's where all the money comes from that funds those prizes.
I did not know that.
Kaboom.
Yeah.
Man, pow.
Yeah. So back in the early days, the rock had to be fractured, and it was done through an explosive. That was pretty much, that's the way it had to be for a long time. And then at the end of World War II, basically there were all kinds of, here we go back to the military, there were all kinds of surplus engines from aircrafts. Primarily the biggest one was the Allison 16-cylinder Allison aircraft engines. And some entrepreneur decided, hey, I'm going to buy a bunch of these surplus engines and find a use for them. And one of the early uses was in the oil and gas industry. They decided if we have a powerful engine that can pump fluids, instead of trying to blow the well bores up, and we'll go in and hydraulically fracture them.
Okay.
So that's where this whole, quote, fracturing thing mushroomed, if you will, because it became the use of water.
Okay.
And so instead of using explosives, it transferred into the world of hydraulic fracturing. So it's like taking a log and splitting it in two, but you use it with real high pressure water like you do with a power washer. You put that under pressure and it'll cut through stuff.
Sure.
Basically, these big engines would pump water down through the well and then break open the rock through high pressure. I mean, these things would pressure up to 3,000 and 4,000 pounds, and then the rock around the well would fracture. And then that allowed the oil and gas to come in. And then through time, people realized that they could change the viscosity of the water. They could start putting what we called proppant. It's basically sand. So you started adding sand to the water. So then when you fracture the well and when you have it under pressure and it's fractured, you continually push more water in and you have it carry sand down there. So then when you stop pumping, the fractures heal because the earth closes back in after the pressure is relieved.
Right.
And then the sand stays behind and helps keep the fractures open a little bit so that the oil and the gas can flow out of the well. So there's always been fracturing in order for a well to produce. And it's just since the early 50s that it became to be done with water. So it became hydraulic fractured.
So you're basically taking the traditional oil well where they drill vertically, but now it's been upgraded to where when you get down to the bottom of that well, now you're going horizontally with this high pressure hydraulic water, sand mix, whatever they use, but you're able to go horizontally and get into those rock layers and force that oil and gas out. Is that correct?
Yes. What's really caused, I don't know if cause is the right word, but what really has led to the inaccuracy about fracking is that in the old days, like you said, the wells were drilled vertically. So if you had a 10-mile area that you wanted to get the oil and gas out of, you may have to drill 10 or 20 different vertical wells all through that formation.
Okay.
So you had to drill 10 wells to get the oil and gas out. You still would go and you'd pump the water into each individual well and you'd fracture it in order to get the oil and gas out.
Right.
But it was done just one well at a time, and nobody paid a whole lot of attention to it. It's been done since the beginning of the oil and gas industry, and especially here in Ohio. It started in the 60s here, or in the 40s at one point, had another big deal in the 60s, and then in the early 80s with the tax law where they could write off all of the drilling costs, and we had a 70% tax bracket. Oil and gas started being drilled all over the place up here. And all of those were done in vertical wells. The frack jobs, if you will, the fracking mechanism, only took a few trucks of water, and nobody, the Jack Fishburns of the world brought big tanks of water out, and they got pumped down in the well. The water would flow back, and then the oil and gas would come after that.
Okay.
So in order to get the oil out, you had to drill 10 different wells and penetrate through the water tables and everything 10 different times. Now, this all came out of offshore stuff because they started directionally drilling. They'd go out in a pad in the North Sea or the Gulf of Mexico, and they'd put one pad out, but they'd drill 20 wells off that one pad. And so they had to directionally drill away from that pad all the different wells.
So you're saying they would go down vertically and then spread out from there?
Spread out like a spider so they could drill all the wells from one structure. And that technology is what is evolved through time. And now what the capability is now is that they can go down to that 1 mile area where the shale formation is. And shale in the early days, we just drilled through it. You couldn't get the oil and gas out of it. It's just the rock is so hard, and so there was no way to produce the oil and gas out of it. We'd always drill through it. We'd get shows and know that there was oil and gas in it. But we kept drilling to go deeper because there was nothing we could do to get the oil out of the shale. Well, now in today's world, they can go down to that shale deposit and drill horizontally out and go a mile to the east and a mile to the west. So so you can go a long way from that one well bore. So now all of a sudden, and this is what's ironic about it, everybody has used fracturing as a bad thing for the environment. But what the reality is, it's really horizontal drilling that has really helped us become the producer we are and to bring out oil and gas that was irretrievable before all this technology.
Kind of untouchable.
It was completely untouchable. There was no efficient way to produce it. And so now we can drill these horizontal wells. And so now what happened was that instead of having 1/10 of the water out there like we would do one well at a time, now all of a sudden you're effectively fracturing to produce, a 10 or 20 well pattern, but you're doing it through one well.
Yeah.
So now you got to bring in all of this water if you're really fracking the equivalent of 10 or 20 wells. And so now all of a sudden people are seeing all these big water trucks and everything, and now they're saying, oh my gosh, what is going on here? And that's where they started calling it fracking.
Okay.
And everybody just the connotation is it's evil or it's damaging.
Right.
And the reality is, in the world we live in now with horizontal drilling, it's way better for the environment. You only drill through the earth one time instead of 10 or 20 where you're putting all these wells all over the place.
Right.
Now you only have one, but because you only have one, you have all these extra resources that have to go to that one well. And then that's where the fracking part became evil. And people, I remember seeing videos of gas and oil coming out of a water spigot in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? Pennsylvania has oil and gas at 40 and 50 feet.
Oh, no kidding.
That's where the first oil wells in the United States were discovered, was in Titusville, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
So it's a 80-foot well, and there's oil and gas there.
Right.
So at 80 feet, your oil and gas is in real close communication with your fresh water.
With your water table.
Right. So you could go anywhere in Pennsylvania and drill a water well and end up with oil and gas in it.
It's kind of common.
It's very common in certain areas because there's oil and gas deposits at very shallow depths. But the oil and gas that we're talking about with what people call fracking is a mile under the earth. And it's the only reason the oil and gas is there,
right,
is that there's a barrier of unpenetratable rock above it so that it can't leak up to the surface or it can't go anywhere. It's trapped in that rock.
Okay.
And so it's a mile down, so it's nowhere close to communicating with any fresh water.
Where is typically your water table?
Your water table is going to be a few hundred feet as a rule. You get below, in Ohio, if you get much below 700 or 800 feet, it's going to start becoming salt water.
Okay.
So you got fresh water in the first 800 feet or so, and depending on where you hit your water, then it's always, water wells can be 50 feet deep or they can be a couple of 100 feet deep.
But you're saying there's a separation between your water table of impenetrable rock, and you're going beyond that, almost you say like a mile depth.
Correct.
To reach your oil. So the two don't ever cross.
They don't ever communicate with one another because when you're drilling the well, the first 800 or 1,000 feet, you put in a piece of big tubing, casing they call it.
Okay.
And you cement that into the ground. So there's nothing but cement and tubes.
Right.
That you drill through after that. So the water, the fresh water, and anything above 1,000 feet is completely separated.
Yeah.
And inside a large tube, like a straw.
Yeah.
And then after you drill, a 13-inch straw that's 1,000 feet deep, then you go in and drill an 8-inch one smaller inside that one, and that you drill all the way down and then into the production area.
Okay.
So it's always separated from the water table.
Okay. Let's talk fact versus fiction, right? Some of the misnomers you hear, we've already addressed this to a certain point. the fracking will cause oil to mix with the water table. And we've already talked about that. It's not.
It just doesn't happen.
It's fiction.
It is fiction. The only time they come in contact is in the drilling of the surface area
Initially.
And if, only in little there's pockets like in Pennsylvania, there's areas where there's really shallow oil and gas deposits.
Okay.
And that's where they intermix. But they intermix because of drilling water wells, not because you're drilling an oil and gas well.
Right. People are running into that every day out there when they're trying to drill.
They've run that since the beginning of time when they started.
They're drilling their well for their home. And they're because the water table and the oil level are basically at the same level. They're having that issue.
And they've always had that issue.
Well, then the second one.
And fracking has absolutely nothing to do with that issue.
With that, yeah. Like we said, they're going to drill their well for fresh water and run into oil.
Right.
It's just kind of inevitable.
And that's only that's very sporadic. There's not very many places that happens, but it does.
The second thing that I always heard about fracking is it causes, now you may laugh at this, causes earthquakes. Right?
Correct.
Okay. Now you talked about the earth wanting to heal itself after you basically drill or frack horizontally. Is that related back to that in some fashion?
Anything you do underground, you've seen it with coal mines, the subsidence happens in coal mines. Those things are relatively shallow. Those mine shafts collapse. The earth falls in.
Sure.
So that's kind of the perception people have. Again, the oil and gas we're talking about is inside solid rock. So when you fracture solid rock, you are undermining, if you will, a little bit of its structural integrity.
Okay.
But there's so much pressure on the earth and there's so much structural integrity, if you will, of solid rock that simply fracturing it for an hour or two and putting sand in and letting it close back up does not in any way make it all of a sudden where it's going to subside or there's going to be. I think the misnomer or the idea of earthquakes has come from, we do use deep water injection to get rid of oil and gas waste or frack water or whatever, if you will.
Okay.
There, you're pumping a lot of water miles down into the earth.
Right.
The jury's out whether there's a direct correlation to that. And when we say earthquakes, we're talking about seismic tremors.
Right.
We're not talking about an earthquake where a building fell over or anything cracked or broke.
Right.
I mean, there are seismic events. It's impossible to know the causation of some of those things.
Okay.
But a direct correlation to fracking is remote at best.
You're not creating a fault line, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
San Andreas fault.
Yeah, we're not creating
because of fracking.
Right.
So the horizontal fracking, one of the misnomers is that people think there's a void. You're going to shoot horizontally, and now you got this 5-inch shaft or 8-inch shaft or whatever that's running horizontally, and then when you're all done, that's just left empty. You're saying the slurry, I call it a slurry, water, sand mix. When it's all said and done, that void is filled with sand, correct? It's not just an empty cavern running horizontally.
It's the straw that connects to the 8-inch tube, if you will, that's running through that horizontal formation of shale.
Right.
It's an open straw.
Okay.
So you cut holes, you shoot holes in it. Imagine you shoot a hole in a circle around an 8-inch piece of pipe.
Right.
And you pump through those holes into the rock. So basically the fracturing that takes place is taking place in the rock.
Okay.
Behind that tubing that you put in horizontally along that.
Your straw.
Your straw.
Yeah.
So your straw, you punch a hole in it, in the side of it, and then you pump water and sand mixture, the slurry, if you will, into the rock and break and cause little fractures inside the rock. And then when you stop pumping, that rock is still all rock. It's now got a little bit of sand in some of the channels you might have created from the fracturing. But now your straw is empty again. You flush the water out, and then once you flush all that water out, then the oil and gas your straw sitting there, and the oil and gas can now come into the straw and pull from the straw all the way up to the surface, the oil and the gas.
Extract the oil.
And that's how you get the oil and gas out. So there's no void.
Right.
You're still, that straw sitting inside of solid rock.
Yeah.
But now it's communicated with the shells, the structure that's all around the straw.
Yeah.
And now you communicate with it, You fractured it so that the oil and gas can flow instead of remain trapped inside the rock. And then now it flows and you can extract the oil and gas.
Let's talk like reward. And I mentioned this before. We have a family friend who owns a farm in southeastern Ohio, down along Woodsfield. And from them, they've said a lot of area farmers have been in touch or have been in contact with fracking companies, and they've allowed these industries to come onto their property or under their property. How much profit would somebody stand? Like if you're a farmer down in that area and you allow fracking, how is that going to benefit you as the landowner?
Well, once you've agreed with the oil and gas company, I'll take umbrage to one thing you're saying.
Okay.
These are not fracking companies.
Okay.
Fracking is a thing you do in order to get the oil and gas extracted from the rock.
Okay.
The companies that do this are oil and gas production companies.
And these are big. You're talking like big time.
We're talking to Exxons of the world and the
BPs and
those are the oil and gas companies.
Okay.
They're not fracking companies. Fracking is it's like saying a warehouser or somebody that does trees is a sawing company. Saw is a tool they use in order to harvest the trees.
Okay.
Fracking is a tool that's used to harvest the oil and gas. There is no fracking company.
Okay. So it's the same. It's the same company out in the Gulf of Mexico as it is, the
in
wells
Saudi
in Texas.
Arabia or wherever you name it. It's the same process. Fracking is a tool that's always been required in order to extract oil and gas.
Okay.
You hire companies to go out and fracture a well, just like you hire a company to go cut down a tree. That's part of the problem in all this, that people think, fracking is the business.
Well, it almost sounds
and
like
fracking's a tool.
Right. It almost sounds like a fly-by-night business. Like, hey, we got these fracking companies coming in.
Right.
It's the big guys.
Yeah,
It's
go
the
frack
Exxon. this. So back to my original question, what's the farmer or the landowner stand to gain by allowing the oil and gas companies in to do their job?
Well, in Ohio, the typical rate that has been developed through time, it can change. A farm owner, the leaseholder, the one that owns the land themselves,
right,
they get what's called a royalty interest. So there's two sorts of revenue they get. One, they sign a lease to lease the property to begin with. So some of these farms, in the old days, that used to be $1 an acre or $2 an acre. With the advent of being able to horizontally drill through this shale and effectively extract the oil and gas because of the fracking tools, people started leasing farmland up here for hundreds and thousands of dollars an acre.
Really?
So there's farmers that have gotten more than the value of their land just for leasing it.
Yeah.
So they could recoup their whole investment in all of their land
right
through an oil and gas lease that just from the lease itself.
And that's just a lease for what's under the ground.
That's just for a lease for what's
then
under the
lease
ground.
Out and plant bean or
and they
corn.
They still have
like
complete use of the surface, all of their land. They can farm. They do whatever they can on their farm. It doesn't affect the oil and gas lease. Is for the oil and gas that's a mile under the ground from the surface of the ground. So when you actually drill a producing well and you get oil and gas up to the surface and can sell it, the farmer gets 12.5% royalty of everything that you sell. So if you sell $1 million worth of gas, they get $125,000.
Wow. So you could see where a farmer who's struggling, right, to make ends meet for whatever reasons, his farm's not producing on the surface. This is an attractive offer, essentially. Hey, let us come in and do our thing, and it might be enough to save the farm. There's
no question that the advent of this horizontal drilling, the stuff that happened here in Pennsylvania and happened in Ohio, greatly benefited the farming communities and the landowners of the state. And it's effectively utilized a resource that was trapped and nobody got anything from. And all of a sudden, technology exists today where everybody can benefit from getting this oil and gas out that could never have been gotten out in the history of man until the last 20 years of advent of better technology.
That's something. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. It's fascinating.
So let's take it a step further. We don't make this a political thing, but under the current administration, you see their practices right out of the gate. They shut down pipeline, and they want to shut down another pipeline. And you look at all the jobs that were lost just in the oil industry and then all the ancillary jobs that went along with that. And then you contrast that with the previous administration. It seems like the handcuffs or the restrictions were taken off. In America, what is the potential as far as oil reserves? If the regulations were less restrictive, what's the potential for America? Where would we be if we were allowed to continue, like 4 years ago or so?
We got to a place that we'd never been to as a country just a few years ago, where we were and still are we were net exporters of energy. We have always been dependent on the rest of the world for our energy needs, especially oil.
Right.
We're completely independent for natural gas because we've got the most sophisticated and developed pipeline system in the world.
Yeah.
But what happened over the past 5 years is that we actually, because of this technology and this being able to drill these horizontal wells and to extract oil and gas that had never been capable of being extracted before, we all of a sudden became we had more oil and gas than we consumed for the first time in the history of this. Wow. Well, since maybe back in the Texas days when they were, certainly in my lifetime, we were never even close to being independent on our energy needs. So we got there.
Yeah.
And now we're falling back because all this stuff is misplaced. It's like the fracking is misplaced in what it's called. And it's a tool. It's not a company. And it's brought great benefit to the resources of this country, individual farmers, and to our own national security, because we have energy that is ours alone.
Right.
It's developed a lot of independence for us, but it's also, we have in this country the most efficient network of collection and distribution of energy anywhere in the world. I mean, we have pipelines that it's like an interstate system. I could show you a pipeline map and it would look like an interstate highway system. And that is the most efficient way to move oil and gas around. Our gasoline comes from Texas through pipeline.
Yeah.
And you have a central distribution point where the trucks then pick it up. If you don't use those pipelines, you've got to either put it on rail cars or you got to run around in trucks. It's way more dangerous. There's way more exposure and leakage into the atmosphere because you're transferring it all number of times from a truck to a truck, into a train, out of a train. Every time you transfer anything, there's loss into the atmosphere.
Okay.
The whole idea of using pipelines is much better for the environment. We are by far best environmentally, the best from a safety standpoint than anywhere else in the world. And now that we had independence and the ability to actually supply the rest of the world with some energy, that energy is going to have a lot better footprint for carbon and for everything else than any place else it could come from. And now all of a sudden we're demonizing the energy business again.
Right.
And we should get our oil and gas from somebody else. And the crime in that is our oil and gas has a better footprint for the environment than anybody's in the world. So if we start producing less, the people that are going to make up for what we can't produce are going to do it in a fashion that's not near as good to the environment. So you lose in every aspect. The energy becomes more expensive, and you put more pollution into the planet. And people are completely oblivious to things that they're proposing.
Yeah,
because it's against the evil. It's actually you hear politicians even say it. Corporate profits are bad. If a company makes money, that's a bad thing. It's unbelievable.
I kind of thought making a profit was the cornerstone of America, right? That's what we're
capitalism.
That's why we're here, and that's why we have jobs. If these companies didn't make money, we wouldn't be working.
Right.
And now, if you produce oil and gas, you're bad. If you make money, you're bad. I mean, in this latest go around of oil prices going up because we don't produce as much now as we did, and we're not as self-sufficient as we once were just a few years ago. And so now they see oil prices go up, and their first reaction is, well, the service stations are gouging people or something.
Yeah.
The market price changes, and through their own policies of not only restricting the use of a safer, better thing for the environment, but they do it. These are the same people that say follow the science. The science of oil and gas is there's no better producer in the world than the United States. Period.
something you said kind of struck home is if we're not, we're the most efficient, most environmentally safe producers of this product, right? Because we take that into consideration. We care, okay, let's try to be good stewards of the environment and so on and so forth. If we're not doing it, that demand doesn't go away. We're going to have to get it from somebody else.
Right.
Overseas where the regulations are kind of laughed at and they just do it however they do it. We're really hurting the bigger picture, the same thing we're trying to save, right? It just doesn't make sense to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And one of the one thing that just struck me is that the whole point of the way we operate in the United States is it is profit driven.
Yeah.
And profit driven things create efficiencies. And that's because we're not a national network and a government owned, we have individual companies that have developed this infrastructure that we have. And it is the most efficient there ever has been or will be on this planet. That efficiency is driven because if you're more efficient and you do it better than the guy next to you and you save money, you make more money.
The profit will be there.
And saving money, the direct benefit of saving money is you're better environmentally because you're not wasting it. You're not letting it leak out of the back of a truck or a train car.
Yeah.
You're running it through a pipeline where you don't lose it, you don't spill it, you don't have people wrecking your trucks and kill themselves.
Yeah.
And guess what? All of that makes your company make more money. And so efficiency and profit actually has the side benefit of bringing less pollution, less danger, more safety, and everything into whatever we're doing. And that's one of the main reasons we are the best in the world at producing oil and gas.
We went through this last election and it was like day one, man. He just slashed these
stroke of a pen.
That XL pipeline gone.
Yeah, thousands of people lost their jobs directly related to the pipeline, and then all the ancillary businesses and around. Right. One that's directly against what was being advertised. Like, hey, I'm here to create jobs, blah blah blah. But you take the ripple effects of that. We're at a point now where gas prices are climbing through the roof, and you think back under the previous administration, gas prices plummeted, and like you said, we were a net positive. We're exporting more than we're importing, more than we can use.
Right.
It's just kind of sickening that it ends up this way.
Natural gas is better for the environment, right?
Absolutely. I mean,
we are the Saudi Arabia of natural gas, right?
We are. And mostly because we have the network of pipelines that we can extract it. I mean, Saudi Arabia and other places have lots of natural gas is what drives oil.
Byproduct.
It's the CO2, if you will, in the Coke can. It's what pushes it out.
Okay.
If you shake up your Coke and boom, so natural gas is what drives the oil into the well so that the oil can be recovered. And the natural gas, you could call it a byproduct. It's part of the energy structure. But in the rest of the world, they don't have the capability to harvest it, put it in pipelines, and make use of it. So it's just flared off and goes into the atmosphere in a big part of the world.
It's just wasted.
Here, we collect it. We've put in the pipeline system. So we have the most efficient system to gather it, distribute it, and make use of the natural gas. So we are far and away the most efficient natural gas provider in the world.
And we've got a surplus, and then we're exporting it now.
We are now liquefying it and taking it to the rest of the world. They had to change the law to allow us to become an exporter. We were exporting oil. I do believe that may have already come to an end because we don't have the oil production now that we had. And the XL pipeline's a good example of the misplaced activity that by demonizing the oil and gas industry, they kill something that's the most efficient and safest way to move something. And so now that oil that can't go through the pipeline has to go by rail or has to go by truck. And there's more polluted into the atmosphere because of that. There's more people put at risk because of driving the trucks and the trains. Everything that they are eliminating drives up the price, hurts the environment. It's completely misplaced, and because they just demonize it for the fact that they can. I mean, the oil and gas industry's been demonized since I've been in it. They don't want to hear the science behind it. They just want to be able to say that these guys are bad, these pipelines are bad, and please send us money so we can stop these guys from doing what makes our energy cheaper and more efficient than the rest of the world. And they raise money to fight the oil and gas industry. It just makes no sense.
Earlier, you used the word oblivious. I think you were too kind. Sounds like pure stupidity is what it sounds like to me. Ignorance.
You know, you look at the alternative, right? We're pushing towards, or they want to push us towards the electric cars and they eliminate the gas engine. Right? Ultimately, that's where they want us to go. From a layman's perspective, where's all that electricity coming from? Right? It's primarily the majority of our electricity, if I'm wrong, comes from coal burning power plants.
Coming natural gas fired.
But 10 years ago, it was 70% from coal.
Right. Which is probably one of the most environmentally.
It's probably 70% from natural gas now. So we've had a huge impact in this country on CO2 emissions just from that very fact alone, that natural gas has displaced coal. So the reduction that we've had in this country over the past 10 years is monumental.
Okay, so say that we're now more natural gas powered.
Correct.
To generate the electricity. You're still going to have to go after that gas. You're still going to have to drill for it.
Right.
Fracture, use the fracking mechanism.
Correct.
So we're really not eliminating anything.
You're transferring it. People see their car going down the road and it's not emitting anything. But the emissions have just been switched. You're now making the emissions in the power plants like you're talking about.
Right.
And I'm all for new technology, and there's no question that electric vehicles have a place and a role in all of this. But the thing that seems to be ignored is kind of what you're getting at. One, you still have to have energy for electricity. That energy there's a cost to the environment for that energy.
Yeah.
And then not only that, the one thing that to me is being ignored here is the environmental impact of all of the mining and all of the things that go in to create these batteries and everything. There's tremendous footprint of carbon and environmental emissions, if you will, from the mining sector, and the trucks run around in the mines. I mean, there's all kinds of things that happen from mining, but then you go beyond that and you've got these proliferation, if you will, of millions of cars down the road, and you've got all these batteries. What's going to happen to those? I mean, it's kind of like the nuclear industry. They put in the power plants, and it's like they never really dealt with
the waste
that they were committed. They just kept building bigger pools and more different way to deal with the waste.
Yeah.
I don't know that anybody's put a thought into the idea of what the waste is going to be like from electric cars and from these batteries when they're spent. And there's all kinds of toxic metals and everything else that are in these batteries. But that's not on anybody's thought process it's early. There's time to deal with that. But the whole point is there's an environmental footprint associated with electric vehicles. It's not in the debate. It needs to be at some point because these things are going to be everywhere, and we're going to have to be able to deal with the consequences of it.
I was thinking about this today, driving around. The concept of electric vehicle 12 years ago seemed like, it'll be a fad. It won't. Today, it's here, right? I think it's legit. I think it's here to stay.
I agree.
They just kind of gloss over, like you said, the waste aspect, and they think, wow, the American public's too stupid to figure it out. But there are people out there that stop and think, well, listen, we're going to have a long-term effect. What are we doing with all this used-up battery technology when it's done? So
we don't know. I mean, I have a good friend who worked with one of the largest banks in the world, and Tesla came to them wanting them to finance a portion of everything. Now, they've got a little bit different model than the rest of the auto industry, but they were coming to them wanting them to finance it, and the banks were coming back saying, wait a minute, that thing's got a $35,000 battery in it. How are you telling me that a spent battery, 3, 4, 5 years, you're telling me that car is going to be worth $40,000? So Tesla was dictating the price, coming off of lease because 90% of them are leased.
Right.
The banks are saying, well, wait a minute here. There's been no market to determine the value of what that car is worth.
Right.
It's got a $35,000 battery that's spent.
Yeah.
And you're telling me it's worth 40? And so it
doesn't add up.
There's a lot of things that don't add up, and people are starting to question things. And I don't know. It's one thing though that will probably surprise me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you mentioned that the law needed to be changed for the U.S. to export natural gas.
Correct.
It was the Obama administration that put those laws into effect, wasn't it?
I do believe that's true, that where we had laws where we were not allowed to export energy.
Yeah.
That's correct.
You look at it back to, not to make this a political discussion, but most people would never guess that a Democratic administration would be the administration that would sign off on us exporting for all the reasons that we've talked about here tonight. It kind of seems.
And the world would be so much better off if we were a net exporter, because, again, we produce it, we generate it, we do everything to get it out of the ground and get it to the market more efficiently than anybody else in the world. So when it comes from here, it's got the smallest footprint it's possible for its extraction. When it comes from the rest of the world, that's simply not the case.
Primarily because we care about it, whereas the rest of the world they don't. Like, they're not concerned with that issue.
I don't know that they're not concerned about it, but they aren't driven. We're driven by the capitalist profit motive.
Okay.
And that generates the most efficient, cost-effective, and therefore the best environmental way to deal with almost anything we do, whether it's energy or whether it's water, whatever it is we're doing. We do it, as a rule, more efficiently than the rest of the world does it. And part of that is because of our capitalist system. I mean, whether back in the old days, we did more steel than anybody else. We've done more of whatever the world's needed better than anybody else in the world because we're more efficient at doing it.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to hear this. The efficiency comes out of the backbone of industry, which is you make a profit. And if you're inefficient, you're going to be replaced because somebody else is going to figure out a better way of doing it. You know, that's what's made this country what it is today, is that we strive to do it in the most efficient way you can, because that's the most profitable way to do it. You can hire more people that way. You can survive. Your business survives under those circumstances.
Everybody gets ahead that way.
Everybody gets ahead. And believe it or not, the environment gets ahead as well, because those efficiencies mean something.
Well, it's almost counterintuitive.
It's less waste.
The current administration's motto, isn't it? Build back better.
Right.
Well,
I think you're going at it ass backwards. Build back better. Somebody said you guys from administration that never built a thing.
Right. They just held a job. That's about it.
Yeah. So,
well, Jim, thank you for coming in. We're coming up against our time here to the limit, but I want to thank you again for coming in.
Yeah, this was great.
Like I said, we had this kind of abbreviated conversation several years ago, and I was glad to bring you back in. And like I said, there's a lot of misconceptions about this topic, and it's good to have somebody who I would consider an expert. He's way more of an expert than me or Scooter, and it's good to get some truth laid out here. So thanks for coming in.
Well, I appreciate it. I'm passionate about the fact that their oil and gas industry has been misrepresented for decades, and we just don't have the forum, or the other people can raise money and paint us in an evil way, and it serves their purpose, but it doesn't serve the people of this country the way it gets portrayed.
Well said. So
seems to be a common theme.
Yeah, demonize the police so you can take their money away too. You demonize everything.
Why don't you go see Seattle or Portland, see how that's going?
unbelievable.
Well, Jim, thanks again. I appreciate it.
Yeah, happy to do it.
Stick around. Well, we got airing of grievances coming up.
We got one coming up, so we're going to find out what's biting our crawls.
All right, man.
All right. Be back in a few.
How does getting paid for your voice and working from home sound in this economy? Have you ever been told you've got a great voice, you should do something with it? Yes, I said getting paid for your voice. It's called voiceover. It's in high demand the world over, and it's what I do for a living. Hi, I'm Ron Allen of Big Voice Productions. I not only do voiceovers, I teach the art of voiceover in comprehensive, affordable, private lessons so that when you complete my training, you can earn either a part or full-time income, all from your own home studio and all over the world. Learn more right now at my website, bigvoiceproductions.com. Then call me to schedule a consultation. That's bigvoiceproductions.com, or call 614-476-8833. 614-476-8833. 614-476-8833. Learn the art of voiceover with Big Voice Productions. Quality voiceover lessons since 1998.
This episode of Airing of Grievances is brought to you by Visine. We all know why your eyes are red.
She's drunk. Welcome back, listeners, to that time of day for Airing of Grievances.
With the airing of grievances. I got a lot of problems with you people. Now, you're going to hear about it.
I love that sound clip.
It's awesome. It's iconic. It's like stands the test of time. My man Scooter is up. He's got a little issue.
Oh, I got all kinds of issues.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna address one of them today.
Oh my gosh,
man, we have this.
We need to have a moment of silence.
Is it dead?
The Dream Ski only made it through about a dozen episodes.
Well, I saw we got tape holding it together now.
This hunk of dung. I mean, we gotta have seriously. Oh, wait a minute.
Oh,
we're live.
You just gotta hit it. You gotta smack it.
Well, it looked like it was dead.
Probably is. It'll probably go from.
Yeah, we would have been in serious trouble because the next Dream Ski sitting on some boat off the coast of California. It's been sitting on there for 5.
Yeah. Take it to Florida. They'll get it right in.
Speaking of, did you hear what I think it was Costco and Walmart did?
No.
2 biggest retailers. They said, all right, if we're going to play these games, we can't get our stuffs into a port. They bought their own shipping vessels, and I think they bought their own ports.
Really?
Yeah.
Where?
Somewhere where there's not a clog or a Biden boat parade off the coast. I would guess it's probably somewhere down in the Gulf or I don't know if they bought smaller ports, but
there's basically
maybe they just went into smaller ports and said, hey,
okay,
we need to get our stuff into these countries. We got the holiday season upon us. That is American ingenuity at its finest.
That's TCB. Taking care of business.
Taking care of business.
Elvis.
And actually, I just thought about it. It's actually where our previous guest, Jim Johnson, he talked about profitability.
Yeah.
So the Biden boat parade off the coast of California. Now, the funny thing is, this isn't even my airing of grievances. You just set me off on this.
All right. Let's stay focused.
All right.
Hey, no, seriously. See a need, feel a need.
Yeah. Well, all right. So we'll just go buy our own shipping vessels and we'll go find another port that we can pull into and offload our stuff.
TCB, baby. Give me a peanut butter and nanner sandwich.
All right, so Dream Ski's back in operation.
All right, let's go.
One more episode at least.
What do you got? Hit me.
All right, Dream Ski. I got 5 minutes. I'm up right now. We talked earlier about LeBums. Isn't that what you called him? LeBums,
yeah,
right? The professional athlete that thinks he's just king of the world.
And NBA, whatever he is. What is he, a Laker?
Yeah. Well,
faker?
all right, so let's talk about college football.
Okay.
It's crazy what these coaches are getting paid. And we got some pretty big coaching vacancies that are open right now, right?
Yeah.
Or were open.
I mean,
we had what? LSU open. We had USC open.
Well, Notre Dame's open now.
Notre Dame's open now. Oklahoma's open now.
Yeah.
I don't even know the whole details of Lincoln Riley got to go from leave Oklahoma to go out to coach USC. But I just heard bits and pieces throughout the day, different news outlets and different people chattering about it.
Yeah.
Contract worth hundreds of millions of dollars.
Right.
USC had to pay out Oklahoma like $14 or $15 million. He had 2 homes in Oklahoma. They gave him $500,000 more than they were worth for each home. So there's another $1 million that went in his pocket.
Gee, many Christmas.
They bought him a $6 million home in L.A. In all actuality, that probably bought him a 1,400 square foot efficiency apartment. I don't know.
Double wide.
And gave his family a 24/7 access to a private jet. This is college football.
Gets a private jet?
I would rather see that kind of money be spent on somebody with an ounce of intelligence, maybe to lead our country or to figure out how to the science, but figure out how to the cure for cancer or something. To me, that's just stupid amounts of money. And a relative of mine always said, these people who are making these decisions at these universities should be fired.
You look at that amount of money, and every year these big state institutions, these universities, they want to raise tuition. Look at this kind of crap you're blowing that money on. You know what I mean? It's like sticking it to these kids. I agree with you. That sucks.
And it's all because some board member or board of regents or board of trustees or whatever at the college he's tired of losing from, to XYZ school and we got to go get the best football coach. Garbage. It's college football. What are we teaching these kids? And you brought up a good point. I didn't even think about that. It's all being passed off at some levels to these kids, and
that's what they're going to do.
Enough.
They're going to pass it on down to the kids. Look, I love college football, and you want to be the best, you got to go recruit the best coaches, players, so on and so forth. But I think somewhere it's gotten kind of out of hand.
And the unfortunate thing is, these people actually think that they're worth this much money.
Yeah,
it's nonsense.
Yeah.
It's stupid amounts of money that they're just throwing around on, again, it's college football.
Well,
This
and
is
that,
not life-changing, global-changing, society-changing stuff here, folks. And we're spending,
I feel you. I'm with you, man. Do you see the nonsense that went on with Notre Dame, right? Their coach, Brian Kelly, took the LSU job, right? Yeah. And he puts out a text. You see this? He puts out a text. This is a classy individual. He puts out a text to his entire team and says, hey, sorry you had to hear about this over social media. I'm going to be back tomorrow morning at 7, and we'll have a team meeting, and we'll talk about it firsthand. These kids have already heard it for hours over ESPN and social media and so on and so forth. And this clown says, hey, sorry you had to hear about it that way. We'll get together tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. and we'll just hash it out. I think most of these guys are going to walk in and like grab their nuts and say, hey, good riddance. These nuts.
Well, that's just crazy. How would you like to be the one guy on that team that he didn't have his text number?
Yeah.
I mean, come on. That's just,
but
it's almost like an insult to these kids.
Right. It's another case where I'm taking the dollar over your loyalty. And he's pumped them full over the years. Like, hey, I think he even said in his text, like, my love for you will never end, or there is no limit to my love for you. Oh, yeah, there is. The mighty dollar.
Yeah. Oh, and they always say, I mean, I met a guy a few years back. He actually played for Urban Meyer at Bowling Green, right?
Right.
And Urban Meyer stood in front of the team. He's like, I love it here at Bowling Green. I'm never going anywhere. Yeah. And 10 months later, he's headed to Utah. I love it here. Why would I ever leave here? Well, they just backed a Brinks truck up.
Yeah.
And that's why you're leaving.
Utah, give it 2.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, but I mean, you look at it, and somebody on the radio this morning, I thought this was great. We're talking about this Riley situation going to USC and just, I mean, astronomical numbers that they're throwing at him. He said, where did the negotiations start that they came down to this and settled on this?
Yeah, this was the average of the negotiation.
Yeah. I mean, you're paying them all this money, and then when you're making that much money, guess what? You can afford net jets.
Yeah.
You can afford wheels up.
Yeah.
Like, the university's just giving stuff away that they don't need to give away.
Yeah.
Go buy the damn thing yourself.
And that's what goes back to, you want to raise tuition? Really? You're going to give a guy that's making $6 million a year a free jet?
And he's making more than that.
He can walk into NetJets and get a membership, and he can fly wherever he wants year round. It's just pissing money away. It's stupid.
Yeah. Hey, that's what I love about golf. Because the golfers, you play well, you make a paycheck.
Yeah.
You don't play good, you don't make the cut, you're set packing. Don't forget your toothbrush on the way out of town.
You know what I love about golf? There's always a lake to chuck your clubs in when you just had it. I hate this sport.
Oh, yeah. Speaking of, too, did you see that match, Charles Barkley commenting?
No.
He said golf's the best sport because it's the only sport they're going to let you drink beer, smoke a cigar, and the damn sport's unbeatable. Spoken by a true prophet, right? Charles Barkley.
Yeah. Oh,
all right, that's all I got. I think the dream ski expired a couple minutes ago, so it's crazy, folks. College football's fun. I don't know, man. It's getting out of control what these coaches are making. Now the players, too.
Well, listen, we hope you enjoyed this episode.
All right, listeners, check us in next week for another episode of American Exceptionalism.
Utah, give it 2.